Alrighty, is this on? Check, check, check. Hi everyone, my name is Arancha and I'm from the California Bay Area, no longer living there, but today I wanted to talk a little bit about endometriosis and adenomyosis from the perspective of someone who has gone through it and who has been recently diagnosed with both. I know that a lot of women are coming on here and talking about their experience with endometriosis now, which is lovely because I wish it's information I had when I was younger. I thought I would add to the conversation because I'm also going through something known as adenomyosis, which I had no familiarity with until I was diagnosed a couple of weeks ago. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the symptoms and my experience with trying to get answers in the United States for 15 years and with zero success with my OBGYNs over there. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about what the experience was of finally getting diagnosed here, what I needed to do to get the diagnosis, what that experience was like, and what the next steps are. So if you're someone who's going through something similar or think that you might be having these issues, stay tuned.
Just stopping the video to provide a quick definition of both of these conditions so that we're all on the same page. Endometriosis is a chronic, painful disease where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus on other organs. Adenomyosis is a similar condition, but it is characterized by tissue from the lining of the uterus growing actually into the uterine walls, so it can cause your uterus to double or triple in size. Both conditions are considered hormone-dependent inflammatory diseases. Okay, back to the video. Bye!
So let's go ahead and talk about my symptoms and any symptoms that you might be going through if you think you might have these conditions. The main symptom that I feel like most people go through and that I went through pretty much as soon as I started my period at age 11 was very, very, very painful periods, to the point in which not every month, but many months I would be throwing up from the pain. The pain was intense to the point where a lot of painkiller medications did not work for me. Pretty much every month on my period, I knew that I would be going through sleepless nights. I would spend many of my nights sleeping in the actual bathroom. My parents would find me passed out in the bathroom in the morning on the floor, basically with maybe a blanket or a pillow or something like that. And the reason why I would sleep in the bathroom was so that I could have quicker access to throw up. From all the pain. I had chills. I had gastrointestinal issues. Anytime my period would come, I would only be going diarrhea, TMI, I apologize. Also, with more frequency. So anytime I would eat, there would be more associated pain, and anything that I ate pretty much came out the other end almost immediately. So it wouldn't be uncommon for me to use the restroom and go number 2 or whatever number you categorize diarrhea as. Pretty much at one point, I think I even counted, I did it 7 times in one day. But 5 times a day was common during my period only, by the way. And another symptom that some women may go through if they have adenomyosis is a pain during sex. So that's something that, later as I became, an adult, something that I experienced as well. Last symptom I'll bring up really quick is bloating. A lot of women go through bloating right before their period, but it was, just something else to add to the list of very many things I was going through. Bloating to the point of looking like I was pregnant during my luteal phase, so the days before my period, and also within the first couple of days of my period as well. So if this sounds like you, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. There is hope, and I want to share with you my story to finally getting diagnosed and getting help after 20 years of pretty much being ignored by my doctors and OBGYNs in the United States, specifically in California, by the way. If you know the California Bay Area, the most prominent hospital there. I'm not going to name names. But that is where I was going. I first went to my primary care doctor when I was about 16. I think I was going to my pediatrician at the time, to go ahead and talk about my debilitating symptoms related to my period. My parents and I realized that this was not normal, and so we figured, let's go to the pediatrician and let's see what they say. She told me that I was going through dysmenorrhea, which is just a fancy term for painful periods. She said some women go through dysmenorrhea, and that the way we were going to combat it was to have me take 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen before my period every month, and to let her know if I wanted something stronger. And yeah, that was pretty much the extent of the care that I got the first time around that I went to go and see a doctor about it. After I turned 18, I started going to gynecologists. And so every year I would go for a regular checkup, as you do as a woman. And every single time I would go in and let them know about my debilitating symptoms. I would tell them all the pain that I was going through, that I was throwing up and XYZ LMNOP. Not one suggested any type of testing for me. Not one suggested any blood work. Not one suggested any imaging. Not one brought up the term endometriosis to me. Not one referred me to a specialist. Absolutely nothing. And that was pretty much the entirety of my 20s of me going to gynecologists in the United States. All of them, though, did try to get me on birth control. They wanted me to stop my periods completely, and they thought that that was the way to manage the pain. By the time that I was in my mid to late 20s, I kind of had researched myself and had become familiar with the term endometriosis. So I started bringing that term up with them. I was specifically told, I think one of the last times that I went to go see an OBGYN in California, I went in with strict mindset and told myself that I was just going to go in and say, I think I have X, these are my symptoms, and can you run any test to kind of see if I do have this? And the gynecologist was a woman at the time. Most of my gynecologists were women who were dismissing me, funnily enough. My gynecologist at the time told me point blank that potentially, sure, I could have endometriosis, that there was no way for her to know for sure unless we did surgery. And what was the point of me going to surgery? Why would I want to go through with surgery only to find out that I potentially did not have anything, and that it would have been a waste of time and resources to go ahead and do all of that? A little pause for that moment, because that is kind of insane. Related to all of this, because I was doing my own research and I wasn't getting any help from any medical doctors or OBGYNs, I started looking into what endometriosis was and how I could potentially myself try to alleviate some of my symptoms without their help. So what I tried doing was adjusting my diet a lot. I started eating less inflammatory foods by the time that I was like in my late 20s. More protein, like healthy proteins like chicken and fish and things like that. I started taking some supplements like magnesium. My symptoms kind of did go from like a level 10 down to more so like a level 7. So that was progress for me, and I was happy that I was able to kind of get to that by myself. After being dismissed for years, you kind of maybe start gaslighting yourself and you start thinking, well, maybe it's not that serious. Maybe there is nothing wrong with me. Maybe it is just painful periods. And so it wasn't even in the forefront of my mind that I would ever get any type of care or treatment for this. I just assumed that I would manage it myself, as I had been, and do the best that I can and call it a day, pretty much. Unfortunately, within the last year, my symptoms progressed quite a bit, even though I was doing these things and alleviating some of my symptoms myself. And they came in forms that were new and different to me. So when I hit 30, I pretty much started getting a lot more mood swings as it related to my cycle. And then I ended up being officially diagnosed with PMDD at 30, which was last year. I won't get into the specifics of that. I'll talk about that in another video if you guys would like me to speak about that. The other symptom that came up most recently was bleeding outside of my period, which has never been a thing for me. I've only ever had regular periods. And so all of a sudden, pretty much like a month ago, I started bleeding a few days before I was supposed to be ovulating. And then I had like a lot of pain on my left side. And I kind of freaked out because this has never happened to me. And it kind of just made me aware of the fact that, okay, something is going on, something is progressing. Let me try to find answers here. And here being Mexico, luckily there are a couple of endometriosis specific clinics here. So that's directly where I decided to go. I was like, let me contact a clinic that specializes in this so they can help me instead of going to like a normal gynecologist. I went for my first appointment at this endometriosis clinic. And I thought the first appointment was just going to be, you know, like a little consult. So it did start with a consult. I met with the head doctor at the clinic, and he's also the surgeon. He listened to me profusely. We spoke for about 20 to 30 minutes about all of my symptoms. He took vigorous notes about all of my symptoms. He asked me pointed and guided questions, which was nice. So he had a whole list of questions that he was ready to ask about what I was going through. This was the first time really any doctor was ever listening to the extent of my symptoms. And he told me point blank, this is not normal. And I want you to know that, yeah, what you're going through is not normal. And anyways, so after that consult, he said, okay, like, I think we have enough information to move forward with an ultrasound. And so literally same appointment, we moved to the next room where we prepped to do an ultrasound, which I have never had in my life. I had never had any doctors care enough to do any type of imaging on me. We move into the next room. The ultrasound is an intravaginal ultrasound. So essentially they stick up a device. I'm not really familiar with the medical jargon, but they stick up something into your vajayjay that helps them gather the images they need to kind of see what's going on in there. They pretty much did the ultrasound for about, I don't know, I think it was maybe 20 minutes. And he was kind of observing everything, moving the device around, taking photos. He was measuring distances of things and things of this nature. After that, we moved back into the original room where we had first spoken and into his office. And he showed me the photos, and he had like a 3D model with him as well of like the female anatomy, and he had a pen and paper as well to draw out diagrams for me about what I had going on. And so literally first appointment, I'm getting all of this information. He tells me, okay, I was able to see endometriosis here, 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 and here, as well as adenomyosis, which I had never heard of before until he told me about it. And he also was able to see that my left ovary was adhered to the pelvic wall on the left side in a way that it was not supposed to be. And he told me that likely that may have been why I was bleeding outside of my period and feeling that pain on my left side a few weeks prior. And another thing he told me was that my uterus was retroverted, something I also had never heard of. But apparently this can happen with adenomyosis because your uterus is so inflamed and growing twice or triple the size of what it should be. It can cause the ligaments that hold the uterus up to become stretched. And that's what he had measured, that my ligaments had become stretched, and that it caused my uterus to move and to be in a position that it's not supposed to be in. Retroverted uteruses can happen to women, maybe like after they've had childbirth or whatever. It's not really the biggest cause for concern per se, but it is another kind of piece of evidence that helps us put together the pieces as to what is going on in my body. Imagine literally within the first appointment, me getting all of these answers. I was overwhelmed. I didn't even expect to get any answers first day. I thought maybe we would have like a first consult and I would come back another day, and we would, over time I would get this information. But no, this was day one. Okay. They were serious about figuring out what was wrong. At this appointment as well, we spoke a little bit about the next steps for treatment. At the specific clinic, they really want to focus in on getting to the root of the issue and solving, any deficiencies I might have, and doing overall blood work and urine analysis, kind of see what's going on, and to make sure that after we do go through with a surgery that it doesn't grow back. So the next steps were that he recommended me to have a full blood test and a urine test as well. He said that I would need to come in fasted after 8 hours and do these exams, and that they would share with me the results, and that we would meet again to discuss next steps. He also let me know that typically when they do find endometriosis, that they do need to go in with surgery to kind of get out the endometrial-like cells away from the areas that they're not supposed to be in. Because they kind of like procreate almost like a cancer. It's not cancer, but they can grow and form adhesions and cause your organs to stick together, and it can lead to a bunch of other issues, as we saw with my left ovary. He also described to me like what the process for surgery would look like with adenomyosis, which is different than the surgery of endometriosis. It would be done at the same time. We can get into it another time once I'm there, but essentially they would need to inject into the walls of the uterus, because for me, I am 31. I'm not sure yet whether I want to have kids, so going through with a full hysterectomy doesn't make sense for me personally. But I liked that the treatment was catered based on your goals and what you're looking for, whether you do want to perhaps preserve the chance of getting pregnant one day if you can. And I liked that they had an approach for trying to figure out the overall problem. Anyways, so maybe in the next video, if you guys are interested, I can talk a little bit more about what the blood test results were, what they found, and next steps from there, because I think that would be useful. And yeah, that's pretty much my experience with all my symptoms and finally getting diagnosed at age 31. To conclude, I just want to put a PSA out there for you. If this sounds like you, if any of these symptoms sound like anything you've been going through, personally, I wish that even though I knew it was a chance it was endometriosis, personally, I wish that I had someone to tell me, hey, no matter how much you're being overlooked by your OBGYNs, please continue looking into this, because it's not going to go away by itself. It's only going to progress, and it's going to lead to further issues down the line. If you're not getting any answers from your OBGYNs, go find a specialist, and then maybe go back to your OBGYNs with the results from the specialist so that, your insurance can cover it. That was another thing for me. It was like I wasn't going to see a specialist in the United States because I didn't know if my insurance would cover it, because none of my doctors had referred me to a specialist, so it was this whole conundrum. Anyways, if you've stuck around for this long, I appreciate you, and I hope that you're well and that this drives you to seek answers for yourself. And yeah, your pain should not be overlooked. Your pain is important. Write in the comments, please, your own experience, your own symptoms, because if you write it down, someone else might look at it and might be able to identify with it. It might push them to go seek answers for themselves as well. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, and I'll keep you posted on the next steps. Okay, bye.